Saturday morning, it's time to talk tech as we kick things off here on the Experts program on Power Talk Radio, and that means Luis Alvarez, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group, is with us. Hello, Luis.
Hello, Mark. How are you today?
Oh, really well, and it's Monterey Jazz Festival weekend, so that's really exciting because I know you're going to be out. Hey, let's jump into the first story here. This is really an interesting one. It comes out of Cal State Monterey Bay from their news department, and it says the East Campus at CUSMB may become California's largest electrification project. Easy for me to say. And it shows East Campus housing. There's about 1,200 units of student, staff, and faculty housing on the East Campus. It's old four-door dependent housing out there. PG&E in conjunction with the school. Well, what are they going to do, Luis?
There's 1,200 units of housing for students, staff, and faculty out there. And part of all of our homes, every one of us that lives in the area, we have electricity, but we also have natural gas. And we usually have gas ranges or gas water heaters and maybe other gas appliances. But gas is one of those things that California is committed to reducing in order to reduce greenhouse gases. And the way you do that is you convert all of those systems that depend on natural gas to electricity, because then you have options, right? You can use electricity, you can use solar, you can use wind, you can use all sorts of renewable sources. And maybe you do end up using a little bit of gas in some of those gas-powered power plants. But nevertheless, the idea is to reduce the gas emissions by getting rid of these gas pipelines that go into homes and converting all of those homes into using electricity solely. So you're going to replace a gas water heater, for example, with an electric pump water heater that uses electricity to generate heat. Maybe it's a Insta-Hot water heater so that it doesn't just heat a bunch of water in a tank, but only heats the water as you need it to take a shower or wash dishes and those sorts of things. So this is the largest initiative that California has to date undertaken with PG&E. So we're going to be seeing that happen in the next few years.
So I'm looking at the story. Kira Abraham wrote this for CSUMB, and it says electrification means replacing infrastructure that uses fossil fuels with alternatives that use electricity. If that electricity is generated with renewable sources like solar, wind, or hydroelectric power, the electrification can significantly reduce the carbon dioxide emissions that drive climate change. Well, but see, therein is the rub, is what's the likelihood or the reality that they are actually going to be using electricity that is generated by non-fossil fuel sources? I mean, if they're using electricity and it turns out that the fossil fuels are being used somewhere else instead of there, what are you accomplishing? It's extremely expensive, and this is where a lot of consumers get a little bit, upset about this, is the fact that you look at your PG&E bill every month and you notice that gas is a lot cheaper than electricity. So you see, well, this is all well and good for the environment, but when are they going to make electricity the same price as gas so that I am really incentivized to want to make this changeover? And that, to me, is the great rub. They're asking people to replace what is a really stable source of energy, one that is far more reliable than the electric grid, and they want us to replace this really reliable source of energy with something that's not as reliable and is much more expensive. So all in the name of reducing climate change, supposedly. And the buy-in will be a lot higher from people when the utilities and the government people come to us and say, tell you what, we'll convert you to electricity, and we're going to do it so that it's so scalable that your electric cost will be as the same or less than your gas. Then I think you'll really see the buy-in.
Yeah, and I think part of that is it's a long-term initiative to allow people to generate more power for themselves. For example, that I've talked about, we converted to solar a few years ago, and it's been really nice to see my electric bill go down rather than go back up.
Right.
And I think as more of these sources of energy come into place where people can generate their own power using, when they can, obviously if it's a cloudy day or at night, my solar panels aren't doing squat for me, so I still need to be on the grid. But I do think that the price of electricity is going to continue to come down as more and more of these sources of energy come online. But I also think that the idea of converting climate change is a real thing, whether we want to attribute it to man-made or any other factor, but we need to find a way to try to control gas emissions. And I think this is a good first step and one that I think we're going to see more of.
I would be more interested in buying into it if I saw that the price point was the the same or less than gas. But when I see things like the legislature, and this is a little bit different from this, but talking about, and I understand where they don't want to see new construction with gas, so they've banned that. But now they're getting to the point where I think it's almost absurdo reducto, and that is they're talking about passing legislation that would force people with existing gas appliances to replace them at their own cost. And the estimate is $25,000 a home. Well, anytime the government estimates anything, you can pretty much double the cost. It's going to cost you much, much more. Where's the average person supposed to get $25,000 or $50,000 to replace all their gas piping, everything like that, and convert over to electricity? And then you have to wonder.
I have some good news for you.
Okay, but here's the thing too: is at the end of the day, will it make that much of a difference? That's the other thing. You're wondering, like, are they getting down to the point where they're trying to get that last couple percent out at a really tremendous cost? I mean, when you go after the low-hanging fruit, the cost is a lot less. But then when you try and get the very end stuff, you end up spending so much, and you have to say, well, what's the ROI on this? Is it really, really worth it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the great unknown. I just read recently that the concentration of harmful chemicals in the air has dropped by 50% over the last 20 years. So the ozone layer is improving. And that's one of the things that we used to worry about quite a bit. When I was younger, everybody talked about the ozone layer. And we managed to turn that around by getting rid of a lot of those harmful chemicals that we were using in day-to-day use. So I think long-term, it's going to be a positive thing. We're going to have to figure out the cost for sure. The good news, though, is if you are looking to replace some appliances today, that the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act has a lot of credits and rebates for people to replace old gas-fired systems with electrical systems, up to and including paying you to improve the electrical panels and electrical wiring in your home. So you should check that out.
So that's something that's available. In fact, if you go online to CNET, they have the story. It posted yesterday at 1 in the afternoon by Andrew Block, B-L-O-K. And you can find that information there. Here's how the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, will save you thousands for energy efficiency upgrades. And they've got some of the numbers written in there, so you can check that out and see how it works for you. Well, listen, really fascinating stuff, Lewis. Love talking about this kind of stuff because it's so exciting. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens out there at CSUMB. That's a great test case because we're talking about a neighborhood 1,200 homes, so you can really get kind of a scalable idea on a number like that of what it means. And that's right here in our backyard, so it's something that you and I can keep an eye on and report on as it moves along.
Absolutely.
That's Luis Alvarez, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group, online, alvareztg.com. At AlvarezTG is the Twitter handle. And Luis, what's the toll-free number for the I-Team?
You can give us a call at 866-78-I-Team. That's 866-784-8326.
So I know you're going to be out there at the Jazz Festival all weekend long. I hope you and Ronnie have a great time.
Thank you, my friend. I hope to see you out there if you have a chance.